I feel like Matt McCall said this best, and he was on last season, and he said something about you need to offer up the one phone call that solves the problem, right? And it was the same thing working with Martha, and it's the same with bartending, actually, if I'm gonna rope it all
Yeah.
is how few steps can you take to get the thing, solve the problem, pour the drink. You can't spend all day pontificating on whatever it is, so you have to run the series through your mind. My sister.
This is not your typical venture podcast. We assume the listener or the viewer can Google simple things like stage, industry focus, average check size, etc. Guests and interviewers do consume alcoholic drinks during the taping of our show. So we do so responsibly, and we ask that everyone do so as well. So let's begin.
Hello and welcome to Drinks with a VC. As always, thanks for choosing to spend time with us. I'm Vik Laquara, founder and general partner of Green Cow Venture Capital, and I'm joined, as always, by Bree Hansen, who heads up BizDev for Burkland, which is a wonderful firm that serves up CFO service advice, etc. for startups. Check them out. Hey, Bree, how are you doing?
Vik, I'm doing fantastic. Had a wonderful summer in Portugal. Busy fall, but I'm excited to be back on Drinks with a VC and even more excited for our next guest.
Yeah, and before we get to the next guest, I just want to say that whoever they might be, said, okay, it was only going to be one season. That's it, one and done. And then we did season 2. And then they were like, no, it was only going to be 2 seasons. That's it. You really screwed the pooch on that. And here we are, season 4. And I think the seasons just keep getting better and better. Our guests are fantastic as always, but the production value has really climbed. I think you can all see I've got a fantastic ring light, and Bree, you've got background.
2 ring lights now, 2.
Yeah, so 2 ring lights. So we're really stepping up the production, but we're very excited. I actually have no idea how the stars aligned and the schedules aligned to bring this next guest onto the podcast, but we are very thrilled that she's joining us. She actually joins an illustrious group of VCs that include Scott Bichuk and Shio Manat and Matt McCall, all of whom led our seasons off. She just recently closed a $52 million fund this past May. But prior to that, she helped raise 3 funds, including one of the largest funds in New York, and certainly the most active fund in New York, Lerer Hippeau. And then across all of those 3 entities, and as an angel investor, she's participated in over 200 investments, including some of the most iconic consumer-facing startups that have been around in the last decade. And we'll get into all of that a little bit later. Currently, she's the board co-chair of the Rocky Mountain Venture Association and on the board of the Rockies Venture Club. She's appeared on CNBC, Fox Business, CNN, the Denver Business Journal. One could say that she's had a meteoric rise from slinging drinks at her parents' bar to being the right hand to one of the most powerful businesswomen on the planet, to now co-founding Hannah Gray. I've been on several Zoom calls with her as a fellow alumni of Coolwater Capital's GP program. And I don't think that I can recall a single Zoom call where she didn't stand out as being probably one of the most engaged and thoughtful and value-add individuals on the call. Heck, her LPs have even said that she's relentlessly thoughtful. So without further delay, and I know that was very long, it was a long mouthful, I'm already winded. Please welcome the pride of Suffield Academy, Kate Beardsley, to the show.
Oh my God, I'm dying laughing. That was hilarious. Thank you so much, Vik. And Bree, this is awesome to be here. And I love the research you guys do. Yeah, this is...
So look, the first cheers is to you, belatedly, from May. Congratulations on closing the fund.
Thank you. I'm here with my Tom Selleck mug.
There you go.
Thanks, guys.
Where'd you get that mug, by the way? I love it.
I adore Tom Selleck. I think this is like a childhood crush thing that my sister probably gave me for like a gag gift one holiday. And I just like can't get rid of it.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
And what is inside of the mug, more importantly?
I am drinking a hot toddy, which I combine two things. First thing is, I don't know if you can see it, my green screen, Fisher's Island lemonade, yes, which is on my hat. It is my sister's beverage company, and it has vodka, whiskey, lemonade. It's 9% alcohol. And then I needed more alcohol, so I topped it with some basil hands. Lovely. That's actually how you make her recipe for her hot toddy. So you just heat it up on the stove, add some more whiskey on top as a floater. It's just my boozy afternoon drink right now.
I love it. I'm sold. And honestly, this is a plea to all the distributors out there and your sister Branya, that we need Fisher's Island beverages across the US, specifically in San Francisco and St. Louis, where Bree and I are located.
Yes, mine are on the way, somewhere in the mail. So you gave us a really good hot toddy recipe there. You're a former bartender. Tell us more about that.
I am, and your background is my old bar, which is fun. And my background is also the bar. The bar is iconic. I'd say that our family got to be stewards of the bar for close to 20 years. The building is, I don't know, at this point, maybe 120 years old, 110 years old. So it's on Fisher's Island, which is a small island off the coast of Connecticut. That's like 7.5 miles long, 2.5 miles wide. So it's tiny. So there's really only room for one of everything. And there's only one bar. So the fun part was, it was like cheers, like everyone knows your name when you go in. It has this iconic dance floor behind me that lights up. It's a disco dance floor, which I just feel like I'd never, like, I mean, I didn't know what a bar was growing up, like nothing. It was just one of those things where you're like, what is this? And because it's New York State, it can stay open till 4 a.m, which is sort of why it's also iconic, is there's just the combination of everything coming together of like, it's the only place to go. It has this cool indoor experience, and it's just a bit of a dive. And so I think if you're into dive bars, like this is probably one of the best ones on the East Coast. I've had people come up to me in New York City when I lived there. They're like, the Pequot's my favorite. It's called the Pequot also, Pequot Inn. And yeah, I got to grow up learning everything about running a small business that my parents were kind of running on as a seasonal business. And my sister and I grew up bartending, which I think is probably the best job to learn I don't know, some qualifications of being a venture capitalist, if I'm honest. Like it was probably better than anything else. It teaches you a lot. And yeah, it was, I don't know, one of the most fun jobs I'll ever have.
I want to get into those qualities that shaped you as a venture capitalist. Before we do, I have to ask, was it Greg or Debbie, your parents? Which one of your parents decided we need to put in the dance floor that lights up?
Nobody put it in, like it was there.
It was there.
Inherited.
Yeah. This is the point, is like, and there's a family that owns it now, because we sold it a couple of years ago, but you're just sort of like the steward for a while, you know, and I'm glad that they shared the same philosophy that we did, is that you certainly need to make improvements because it's a 100-year-old building, keep it functioning, but you don't want to take away the character. So the dance floor was there. And I've heard so many stories about how the bar used to be in the middle in a semicircle, you know, but it's basically a pit that they dug out and just decided to put up a light up dance floor in the 70s because that was all the rage. Yeah. And it's still there, and like the amount of debauchery that like happens.
Spring Studio 54 to Fisher's Island.
I know. Yeah, there's like these big, huge fans that we always have in the corner because like everyone's just a sweaty, disgusting mess. Like, from one to the other.
Do you feel like, okay, so now getting into kind of your personality as the bartender, do you feel like you are just someone that has to be social 24 hours a day, and be around people and have that human interaction all the time? Or do you need a little bit of a kind of a time to yourself to really deflate a little bit?
Definitely not a people person all the time.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm probably more of an introvert naturally. I kind of have to psych myself up for the social stuff, but then once I get going, I'm fine. But bartending was like certainly an easy way to be like, okay, this is my job. I have to go do it. So we used to joke, we were like, we have to go throw a party every night.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's sort of like flexing a muscle, right? Where you're flexing like the social muscle in your brain to say, hey, we're going to meet people, et cetera. Given that, and given our sort of, occupation as venture capitalists that are constantly meeting founders, meeting other investors, are you surprised at how socially awkward and maybe tone deaf
Your
a lot of VCs are? I'm coming out there hard with this question because
I hadn't actually really given this much thought. I'm not, because I think the way investing started, I mean, from the research I've done, because have not been there since the beginning of sort of venture capital formation, but the type of individuals who are attracted to the job, and essentially the job used to be a very clear combination of, do you have a PhD in either, engineering or some sort of scientific technological background, or whatever highest degree you can accomplish, because you have to be able to evaluate the technical stack that existed, in the 90s. And then a business degree as well, right? High sophistication of analysis. And those two combinations probably result in a very introverted person who, spends a lot of time studying. I spent a lot of time studying too, but I think those were the things that were valued and probably put to the forefront. And that was the pattern matching that sort of recognized what a good venture capitalist could be, because those were the hardest things to sort of find the combination of someone from a top tier school who had those types of capabilities. And they were looking for that to be able to come and join the team. And so if that was sort of the ideal match, everything around it was probably increasingly awkward on that. And I think we're acknowledging the people skills that probably exists in order to be involved with the companies and want to work with other people.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's almost too much dependency on creating a persona on Twitter nowadays than there is on like connecting with founders in person and, in kind of the old school communicative ways?
I'm not a very big tweeter, I have to say.
Okay.
My partner is, though. She's good at it. And I think one has to, like, I love the purpose of Twitter and the space for conversation. I think it certainly lends itself that, remember like blogging back in the day, like, Chris Dixon sort of rose through that. And so there's these channels of, how do you put your thinking out there so that people can react and respond to it? And it certainly crafts a certain persona. I think if you're going at it to be a persona on Twitter or through a blog, that's probably you're missing the point. I think the whole point is to be having a conversation with an audience that you care about and having a discourse. And from that becomes a persona. I don't know. I'm a pretty private person, and I just feel like, as I'm saying this, I'm on a drinking podcast. So, but I feel like I'm better one-on-one conversations than just sort of a group. And I'm really bad at monitoring like what people say and respond to them in that format. So I don't even try.
I mean, I think that's a problem that I've had forever. It's like, you want to be a part of the discourse. The discourse tends to either weigh you down, bum you out, or just be too much to keep track of. And then you kind of leave the platform, come back to it. And it's hard to be kind of always on. I feel like, and we've had guests on the show, Bree, where, people that are really involved and on top of their social profile, right?
Or they got engaged.
Yeah, or they got engaged on
Let's
Twitter,
see.
or whatever it might
Let's
be.
see how active they are once their family gets started, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, although I think it's like the subway. You get on, you get off. Like the whole point of it initially that I remember when I was started to engage in Twitter was, like it's not meant to be like a book you start and finish. Like you just sort of engage when you can. But yeah, I don't know. Twitter's one of our investors, so I'm a fan, obviously.
No, and you are on Twitter. So what is your Twitter handle for our listeners and viewers?
My Twitter handle is Shillo, which is my maiden name, Shillo. I used to be able to get all the handles for everything at Shillo, and it would be like me and my cousin like trying to.
Yeah.
I think for Instagram.
Yeah, and for our listeners and our viewers, you are active on Twitter, and I think one of the ways that you utilize Twitter is to amplify the companies that you invest in, right? And I think that's a fantastic usage of Twitter.
Or lazy, but yes.
Yeah, or lazy, whatever you want to call it. Can you tell us where your avatar on Twitter came from? Because it's not you, it's not your face.
Exactly.
Is that NFT?
It is. This is Jessica, my partner, and Sutian Dong are the co-creators of Women in VC, which is the largest global community for female investors. And so there was this awesome NFT drop that they did earlier this year, just really promoting female artists. And they did a bunch of NFTs with women holding money, or sort of this association with like women and money. And there was a ton of cool different NFTs. And so it was a fun drop, and bought a couple, and it's just like I don't know, like I just like looking at it. It's better than my face. I don't think I've ever had my face on it anyway.
As your Twitter profile.
Usually like a Fisher's Island scenic picture is probably more like what I like looking at. So
yeah. Speaking of NFTs and Web3, you've made a number of investments in that area. I think Genies was kind of early on, but then you've done a bunch of Web3. There's Floor, Gateway. I'm really interested in this, and I was talking to Bree about this over the weekend as we were prepping and kind of doing background on you. You are, this customer-centric driven investor. And I kind of picture myself as one of those as well. And then simultaneously, though, we've got this movement of Web3, and I've always approached Web3 with a lot of trepidation, because I feel like there are a lot of founders out there that are building stuff, but they don't have like the customer-centric hat on when they're building. So there's like, they're just building stuff, throwing it over a wall, and people, I don't know. And so I really stayed away from investing in that area, but you jumped into it. And so I'm really interested in understanding where you think this is all going. Are we heading in the right direction here? Not, beyond NFTs and avatars, but, looking at what you do with Floor, looking at Gateway, how is Web3 going to shake out for us?
I have no idea how it's going to shake out. I think that's sort of the fair and honest truth of anyone candidly in Web3 as well. I think there's hopeful strategies on what we think it could end up being. And obviously everyone hopes for a really nice payday too, which I have a question mark around that as well. But we spent time thinking about a thesis around consumer on-ramps for Web3. And if we felt like, and Jessica can wax poetic on this topic for a really long time because she came from a corporate CVC. So for her, it was an evolution of, there's an opportunity in Web3 to be the evolution of the influencer strategy also, which I think we've seen for better or for worse. How do brands interact with, a Web3 presence? What does that look like? Does it feel like they need to have their own NFT strategy? I would say token gated NFT experiences. Like what does it look like to engage with a brand in Web3 is sort of a big question mark. We had and then how does that also trickle down to the consumer interactions? And so we parsed it out in a couple of different ways of saying, if we are looking at the sort of progressive consumer base that wants to be involved in Web3, where are the elements that they need to see innovation in order to feel connected to their Web3 presence? And so for the few that we've made investments on, we did a company called Upstream, which is DAO management. And so that was something too, is like, if you're a part of a DAO, how do you stand up a DAO very quickly? How do you manage? How do you, kind of bring that community together? Floor, which is a token gated NFT portfolio tracking and management app right now. And so I think that's key because it's token gated. So there's obviously, and it won't be for long, but it's just one of those things where they want people who are testing that to be engaged. And their community is bananas. Like, it's just wonderful. And so this is something where you say you have a lot of NFTs to manage, you have a large portfolio, obviously the market goes up and down very quickly. So how do you view that, very quickly to get a sense of sort of what your portfolio, how is it performing? It's probably one of the most useful things from a consumer perspective that I think we've been seeing like right out of the gate. And then Gateway is another one. We think of that more as like a LinkedIn strategy for Web3. So what does credentialing look like? How do we talk about the work we're doing in Web3? If you're a consumer, if you're involved in DAOs, how do you display that? How do other people recognize that work? That one I think is very evolutionary in terms of, we're just going to have to see how work starts to frame up and what those examples are and how people start to communicate that quickly. And then a fun one that's in content is called Hero Maker. So it's superhero content for the metaverse. And that was actually founded by the co-creator of Comic-Con. And so you can imagine, this was one where we just felt like this would exist. I think a lot of Web3 users are just deep superhero fans as well. There's also, one could argue, the only blockbusters anymore are superhero movies. And so there's something along the lines of the build up to those blockbusters. What does that engagement look like post? There's like this whole world that exists in Web3 conversation around content. And so there's really hasn't been content yet that we've seen cohesive. There's Bored Apes and their content around that, but what does storytelling look like in Web3, and what is that a future of engagement there? And then there's another one called Based, and that's messaging for Web3. And so this was the other, I would say, part of it is like, how are you going to be communicating right now? We see a lot of Telegram, we see a lot of WhatsApp, but these were things, or we also see Discord, but these were all things that were sort of standing up in Web 2 and then sort of pivoted into Web 3. How can you be more, for lack of a better term, engage in sort of a 3D universe with messaging and sort of there's discovery and purpose there that I think is also in flux. So that was essentially our thesis. And we feel like Web3, we were ready and engaged in a period where Web3 was sort of going bananas. And I think we feel pretty satisfied that, we've met the thesis right now in terms of where our investments are, but we're still monitoring the space and seeing what other things kind of pop up. But yeah.
What do you think Web3 is going to look like in 10 years? Like, how is just a normal person going to interact with the concept of Web3?
Yeah, I don't know. Because I think about it now and I'm like, all right, if the youngest audience you have, who's probably, let's say, middle school teenagers, like if they're participating in Web3, what is the need and desire that they're going to have going forward? I definitely think payments is going to be a key part of it. But I think it has to stem from a deep value set. It's not just function, it's belief, and most of Web3 believes that there wants to be this ownership that they own, right? They want to be able to track that, have that secure, make sure that it's not sort of a big brother situation with a large overarching corporation. And so if that's still a core value that most participants in Web3 feel inherently, like that has to stay. And that's probably going to be the central focus on usage and purpose. But I mean, it's interesting because I think there's so many predictions of, like, could you own your healthcare data and have that be, and then could you potentially like sell that back to big pharma that needs data, instead of it just sort of being anonymized right now without your control. And could you benefit from that in some way? So I don't know, but I think there's just so many different avenues that all of this could take, but it really depends on consumers ultimately finding entertainment and value in the ecosystem. And that's part of why we think about the consumer on ramp is it easy to onboard? Are you enjoying it? Do you feel like you have a community there? And does it continue to pull you back? Not unlike Twitter, right? Like, and you can also, and what does the role look like if you're a passive holder or passive participant in a DAO versus like someone who's running the thing day to day and that's your job actually. So, yep. I don't know.
My spiked iced tea talking, but I feel like the whole idea of ownership is like one angle, and it's very much that first generation of Web3. But like, I feel like there's going to be upcoming generations that are more about equality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. And that's a whole element of how are you, like, it makes me think of gifting, inclusion, participation. And it's sort of funny too, because as much as I think Web3 started out as we want to give back ownership to the people who should have it, it was also like a walled garden. You know, if you weren't there first, you weren't there first.
You weren't there. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's a fascinating sort of elitist mentality as well, like at the same point of democratization. And so I think there needs to be this figuring out of what equality looks like in an environment where a bunch of people can, a select few can get incredibly wealthy based on inside groups and clubs, for lack of a better term. So
well, it's funny that there's like this land, like literally a land grab, and you're like, there's infinite land in the Web3. Like, why are you paying so much for real estate? It's like infinite.
Someday all be worth it. I mean, it's all glorified horse betting, right? Like nobody knows. That's the thing that gives me at least like some peace of mind at the end of the day is like you can have your signal strategy both in public markets, private markets, Web3, like anything, but there's also a sheer amount of right place, right time that has to be in your corner too.
Yeah. And you've actually, by the way, just listening to the stories of all of our guests that we've had on, I feel like your story has been more right place, right time than anyone else's story. And I want to jump into that, and I'm going to showcase it through a game that we're going to play.
Nice.
You ready to play a game?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to call this startup mixology. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in this game, I hope you have your drink ready. So here's how it's going to work.
The drinking game.
Bree and I are going to give you 3 clues about a company that you've invested in.
Oh God.
Okay? This is going to be great. No, really, you're going to.
It's good. It is good. Yeah.
You'll have a chance to guess after each clue, or you can pass to the next clue. If you do guess and you guess wrong, you have to take a sip from that refreshing Fisher's spiked lemonade that you've then also added the bourbon to. Nice. If you get it right, then we drink. It's very simple.
Fair. Totally fair.
Fair? Okay. All right. So we're going to start off with the first clue for the first company. This company was founded in New York in 2010.
Okay.
Do you want to guess?
That's all I get?
That's all you get. That's the clue.
It's 61 investments in Fund 1. They were all in. By
the way, that's how you softcore flex on a podcast. Like, 2010, 61
they
investments.
They were all in 2000. I was like, we did. I don't know. I'm going to say our first investment in 2010 in Lerer Fund 1 was Venmo.
Okay, you're wrong. Please drink.
Drink.
Damn it.
This is fun. I like this. We should play this with all of us. Okay.
I have no idea. I need another hint.
All right. The legal name of the entity that you invested in was Jand Inc.
Oh, yeah. Jand. Oh, it's Warby Parker.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yay.
Correct. Well done. All right. Well, we have to drink then.
She's like, I'm going to drink too.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that was like our third or fourth investment. Good one.
Can we talk a little bit about your time there and how, it must have been very exciting to be going out and building what would then become this huge fund. What was the experience like for you? And in particular, kind of connecting with the founders of Venmo and Warby Parker, for instance.
Yeah. It was the best job ever. It was so freaking fun. Mostly because, and I just have to give credit to Ken and Ben Lerer, like they have the best sense of humor. And I think that's generally, now that I'm older in venture capital, I didn't realize that like no one has a sense of humor really about.
Yeah.
And it's actually ridiculous, but that sense of humor, I think, kept things rooted in a sense of reality where we didn't take ourselves too seriously. We didn't take the process too seriously. It was just so much fun to come to work every day because half of it was like, none of us sort of knew what we were going to be seeing, doing, working on. There was just this sense too, because it was a pretty bleak time. Like at New York in 2008 through 2010 was one of the most depressing circumstances. People were losing their jobs. I mean, this is when storefronts were closed. It was really, really sad, to watch these big corporations kind of cripple. And
cue the movie hustlers, J-Lo.
Yes.
So it was really nice to go to work every day and kind of like laugh and like we would just sort of be joking with each other a lot. And I don't know, just having an outlook like that. And it was very serious. We got a ton of stuff done. We were highly productive. We made decisions really quickly, which I think some VC firms can get plagued in like over-analysis of strategy, thesis, company, whatever. But it was very, I think we were very clear on sort of who we wanted to work with, more so than like, we have to do something that would disrupt the supply chain. And we'd really like to be, against what Luxottica is doing, there was sort of this core thesis. And then Warby Parker walked in, it was much more along lines of, we really liked their approach. At the time they had a big virtual try-on strategy. So I think that leaned into like, okay, it's tech. Because that was probably the first one where it was like, this is really a consumer product. And one of the first we saw, but that angle, I think, helped us underwrite, okay, we're a tech firm investing in technology. There's virtual try-on strategy. So it would fit, but it allowed us the experimentation to go into something else.
Is that also where you sort of develop it's great to be at a table where you're not the smartest person mentality?
Oh, 100%. I always have had also just a deep appreciation. For apprenticeship, like I looked at education as such, like I looked to find ways to learn from people who were smarter than me. And if they're willing to share that knowledge, I didn't see a better career. Like it's amazing. Like sit next to, like all I wanted to do after college was sit next to a genius every day. Like if that was sort of my goal.
Well, and you did that. So let's go to the next set of clues. Bree, do you want to read them out?
Yes. This company was female founded in New York in 2009. Yeah, it's very similar to the last one.
No, we did the deal in paperless post in 2009.
Wait, bingo, you got it.
You got it.
Yay. So we drink. Yeah.
That is incredible. And I try to make it as vague as possible. That is bullshit.
Female co-founded.
True.
Correct. So here, I'm actually struggling with this. I was talking to one of my advisors on my LPAC, and they're like, Vik, why do you say co-founded? You founded it. I'm like, well, yeah, but I founded it with someone else.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, but you're a founder. And why is it always that nice people are saying that they co-founded, And then,
I think it's a test for an ego, right?
it's an ego, right? Maybe it's an ego thing.
You can do that on here and be like, do you feel you're a co-founder or a founder?
Yeah. And by the way, for our listeners and viewers, the other interesting clue in the fact that we were going to give that Paperless Post actually started at a Harvard party.
Yep.
Right, in 2008. And it was just all about how do we invite a bunch of people to Josh's birthday party, right, at the time. And the reason why I bring up Paperless Post is I feel like you have had a knack over however many years now of identifying, again, the customer-centric startups that are building a brand around customer centricity. Do you want to comment on that at all? Because I feel like whether it's Web3, we're just talking about Web3, NFTs, whatever, fine. But I really feel like you have the consumer investor dialed in, like that approach to consumer investing.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I think, sadly, I feel like I'm only as good as like the last thing I did. And I didn't realize how great it was to be the ideal consumer in my 20s in New York City, when a lot of the entrepreneurs were sort of building for the millennial demographic. I'm going to have to work a lot harder to stay relevant as I age. But it was really nice working for the genius that is Martha Stewart and understanding how she was putting herself in the shoes, and then therefore everyone who is working at the company, always in the position of their end user, like consistently. So
what does that look like? Just constant questions? Like, how did you guys do that?
I think it was having empathy for their experience, like deep empathy. And also the little Steve Jobsian, like they don't necessarily always know what they want. So we want to also serve them up something that was this elegant combination of taking something that might be a little aspirational and breaking it down in a way that even if they weren't going to go do or construct that thing, they might actually just want to observe and understand and follow along. So if we think about Twitter again as a reference, like, are you a big doer or are you just sort of also a participant? And so like the levels of the consumer engagement desire there. Obviously that's a content business primarily, but then moved into products and all the other stuff. But Paperless Post, I think, was a really interesting transition for me, coming from sort of an older media company, or omni media, because it was omni-channel and also products too. Going into something that it was the first demonstration I saw that technology could be beautiful and that design could be at the forefront and therefore a proprietary asset in being able to construct something. So if you put Paperless Post up today against Evite has progressively gone the direction of Paperless Post over like the 15 years and is a little more styled than it initially was. But I felt that even if you're a business, and who's going to pay for a B2B contract with Paperless Post? Well, like Ralph Lauren would happily pay if they could customize it to their design aesthetic. And so the fact that the Paperless Post team was really front-loading design, Apple did, and look at it. So there's this sense of staying power and creating a culture of that mentality that I think your employees start to favor. Same with Martha Stewart, you had plenty of things that tried to sort of do the likeness, but nothing like the original. So, that to me, it was sort of delightful function when I remember the envelope opening and it was like so special back then. But that was really progressive at that moment. And it felt like you were actually getting an invitation. And then I do remember lamenting to Ken because he was doing some cool event. And I was like, can we just use Paperless Post so I can just get their emails instead of hand addressing stuff? And he was like, what is this? And I was like, it's amazing. So I think the flexibility of that, but also again, sort of like Instagram, you feel like at the beginning of Instagram, people didn't feel like if you weren't a professional photographer, so the filters became the thing that elevated people. Yeah. This idea of like, let us give you a bunch of templates or strategies to elevate the design because we can sort of make you look a little better than you might have done it yourself, but you still get credit because it's coming from you.
Yeah.
All right. Some of that more, but we've got this mixology game.
Okay, go.
Oh wait, no, we can jump into this. Well, we're gonna jump Martha and that whole group here. Okay, here we go. I feel like I made these way too easy now. I don't know. This is another women-founded company out of New York. The founder launched the Pink Tax Rebate.
Georgie from Billy.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it. It's too easy, Vik.
It was a good one. That one was like in their initial pitch deck pre-seed round. And so I was really impressed back then that she had the foresight to be like, this is this area we're going to go out.
This is it. Yeah. How do you work and do you work with your portfolio companies in a very hands-on way to kind of get them to be better about building a customer-centric product or service?
Yes, we also hope that they initially have a deep appreciation for it because I think unless you can have a discourse and you have an interested party on the other side who's like, they have to be obsessed with their customer, like more so than us. I mean, we should be interested, they should be obsessed. I just think that's the only way, like to really, I mean, think about some of these problems that people are solving. Like you have to know it inside and out. We definitely spend a ton of time supporting them. We actually, in some cases in our diligence process, we'll do our own market research, pay for it, give it to the founders and say like, here, because they'll come with data around, say what they feel like the market research is showing. And we're happy to be like, okay, we believe you. We want to run our own questions, or we'll ask them sort of like what queries they have, and do our own kind of interview process too, just to validate. But we spend a ton of time. And I think the customer relationship deepens over time, it changes. And so it's not just like a one and done thing. You kind of have to be candidly taking customer interviews, like really understanding, speaking to them the whole time. I always love hearing from founders where they're still kind of steeped in that process. I think the customer success side of things can make or break your business. And this is a deep consideration of B2B too. I think B2B is a little foggier on you don't always get the same feedback loops, right? You can get very immediate feedback loops on consumer, but it takes such a longer time to really peel back the layers on B2B because there's just not the same transparency loops.
I don't think a lot of people out there have this appreciation about what you do and other folks in our industry do from that angle, particularly in due diligence. I mean, you try and be the first institutional check into a company, right? At Hannah Gray. So are you getting on calls with your potential portfolio company's customer and saying, hey, how sticky is this product for you and how do you use it? Or tell us to the extent that you do that in your due diligence process.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the customer interviews, talking to someone who's already done it. In some cases, though, it's, how much customer discovery have they done to date? But we have to have an appreciation and understanding for what the feeling is around that product. And sometimes they're always like, yeah, this is nice to have. This is always that painkiller vitamin conversation. Yeah. And I just think it has to continue on saying like, I didn't know I needed this. I would really miss it if it was gone. Like this is a deep functionality that I love and it's become part of, our tech stack, our everyday experience, like whatever that looks like. So we definitely spend a ton of time on customer interviews, looking at sort of what customers would like and not like. It's hard though, because the product from when we're looking at it sometimes doesn't even exist yet. There's a promise of building it. And so the iteration of what that product could actually look like a year from when we're having those conversations to what it ends up being in market could be really different. I think since we just talked about Billy, it was interesting. I mean, I had enough data already, and so did the Billy team, around how many female subscribers were subscribing blindly, like to Harry's and Dollar Shave, which was like, I knew it needed to exist anyway, but that data was like, oh, imagine they actually had a product for them. Like they would just move over. And then you'd actually have other products for you. So that felt like a no-brainer, but
nice.
It wasn't always for every investor. I remember them being like, why?
All right, final company. Bree, do you want to ask her
all right, the first clue is going to be very hard. So founded in New York, that's all you get.
Damn it. Founded in New York.
If she gets this, we're just ending the podcast.
Founded in New York. That's like 90% of my first
All right, give her the second clue.
Okay. The company's first acquisition was Kingfish Labs in 2012.
Oh, was it first acquisition? I thought they had another one before that. Is Buzzfeed?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's the first acquisition. Wow.
Yeah, I feel like they did one of our other portfolio companies. This was like one of the funniest meetings or partner meetings we had, because there was what was the name of the gaming? Zfrank Labs. Zfrank was like, just go Google, he's hilarious. And we had invested, it was like fund one, and Jonah showed up for one of our partner meetings because he was a venture partner, and he was like, I think they're probably going to have like a good, soft landing somewhere. Like, and we all were like, okay. Later, he like BuzzFeed acquired the company, and we were all like, oh, and he was like, I told you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, look, BuzzFeed is interesting because they're as notorious for their quizzes and listicles as they are for now hard-hitting journalism. Whether people trust them or not is a completely different conversation. But I'm interested because at that point in time, they had started as an instant messaging client, like as BuzzBot, and then people would just send links that they liked to one another via BuzzBot. And I'm wondering if when you invested, was it BuzzBot or was it like the full-fledged BuzzFeed media kind of?
It was BuzzFeed as it was like going to be a media company. But Jonah was experimenting with a lot, and obviously the co-founder of the Huffington Post, and he and Ken used to meet regularly. And my favorite meetings were like, Jonah is hilarious. He's just one of the funniest people. His sister is Chelsea Peretti, who's a comedian. So like,
I love Chelsea Peretti.
Of like just Google Jonah and like some of the stuff he would do. Like he's actually an incredible brain on virality. Like he basically created virality. Like, and there's this ability, like, and talk about sense of humor. Like you have to have sort of something to stick and hook, and maybe from this distillation, it's either design or a sense or something like humor that ropes you in, but there's probably that formula. And I just remember some of the meetings where he's like, I feel like we should do something with cats. Like cats are fun.
I love it. Meetings. Like, I love it. So funny. We don't presume to be as funny as BuzzFeed, but we have a game within a game. Let's get to a greater purpose. Are you ready to play that game?
Totally ready.
All right, here, let me just share my screen here. Oh my God. For those of you who are just listening, we have a slide, very BuzzFeed in nature, and we're asking Kate, which badass businesswomen are you most like? And there are three options: Arianna Huffington, Jessica, her co-founder over at Hannah Gray, and Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart is looking very thirst trappy 2020 right now.
Her Tinder profile.
Naked with an apron.
Yes. But Bree and I were wondering, you've had the pleasure of working with amazing women. You're the right hand to Martha Stewart. You were employee number 20, I think, over at Huffington Post. And you and Jessica have now created a $52 million fund together. So which one of these three amazing women do you kind of model yourself the most after?
I mean, Jessica, we're like two peas in a pod. So I don't know that I necessarily model myself after her or she does me, but we finish each other's sentences at this point. So I feel like we are one brain.
Wow.
That's the way our days go. So
yeah. But by the way, Martha, if you ever listen to this, she picked Jessica over you.
So, but I have to say, coming from New England, I mean, Martha was like everyone's, like pillar of like, I don't know what it meant to be I think everyone in my mom's generation emulated that. Like she was the icon of perfection.
Well, so speaking of Martha Stewart, I'm feeling a little arts and craftsy. Is that a thing? You can say that, right? Artsy and craftsy. How do you even? I don't know. Whatever.
Especially after COVID, I feel like we're now all acknowledging the hobbies that came out.
So I think Bree and I would like to start the first of the VC unboxing segment right now. Open up the Amazon package. I want to say I was going to say we were going to be very elegant and have multiple different packages. Amazon, super efficient, delivered everything in one package. So open up the package from Amazon if you would.
Yes.
I'm very excited for this.
I feel like I should take my green screen off for the.
Yeah, you might have to, if you don't mind.
Well, let's see. Okay, hold on. I'll do this first.
Okay.
You guys, this is insane. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, there we go.
One, well, these are two together. And this is, what is this called? An embroidery loom is what I'm seeing. And then, embroidery stitching.
To our limited knowledge in this subject matter, they're supposed to be needlepoint kits for you.
I'm actually going to do this.
Okay. By the way, there was some thinking that Bree nixed, thankfully. Well, Bree nixed this idea of us trying to needlepoint with you while drinking and conducting the interview.
And then you stab yourself in the finger.
Because I started my first needlepoint.
Oh my gosh! Wait, here. Okay,
because of you. And I don't know what I'm doing, to be honest with you.
Yours.
So mine is a. This is. I don't know if you can quite see it, if it's within focus or not.
Is it a pumpkin spice latte?
It is a pumpkin spice latte, which I like to think is spiked.
That's amazing. I wish I had my daughter. I'm making my daughter a Christmas stocking. This is very Martha Stewart of me.
I love it.
And not in the room right now, but it's like huge. And I did one for my other daughter and it took me like 2.5 years. I mean, I didn't do it every day, but it was one of those things where like COVID, I got the stress of fundraising and the stress of COVID. Like I basically finished the stocking because I would just be like, oh.
Well, so what got you into needlepoint in the first place? Because this is, I mean, it's unusual, right?
Yeah. Although it's like, I'm not a wasp, but it's like a waspy lady thing to do. So I guess like Jess teases me and she's totally right that she's like, Kate just wants to be an old lady, like knitting, like listening to pitches, which
like
is
now you want to be an old lady now.
Exactly.
Because and not just old ladies. And by the way, just very quickly, I want to say thank you to Libby over at Needlepoint Clubhouse. She told me that so Needlepoint Clubhouse is
so awesome.
Is literally like the go-to place for needlepoint.
I have no idea.
Like it's a destination. People go from across the country. I didn't know this, and it's just down the street from me in St. Louis. And so
I think I have a place that's doing my finishing in St. Louis. Actually, that wouldn't be surprising. Yeah.
But so how do you get into it? It's something that old women do. Was it your grandmother, your mom?
No, although I come from a very crafty family. I think I come from a family of just like, I think this is true. Maybe I'm making assumptions here, like immigrant families, like you make a lot of things, there's sort of, like, so my dad's side of the family, both my grandparents were like highly skilled at everything. Like, I think if they, just were stuck in their house because of COVID, like they could just make everything they needed. They were incredible gardeners. My grandfather was a machinist. He also could king chairs. He could make furniture. My grandmother would get up at 5 a.m. and like bake a pie and knit. And so like some of this stuff was just like, you have to do it in order to take care of your family. And now that's sort of gone out the window. So needlepoint wasn't a thing because that was candidly pretty decorative. But sewing and all that sort of stuff was generally like your kids needed clothes. And my mom's an amazing seamstress. So she grew up when she ended up working in retail, sort of because of that like hobby, essentially. So my aunts and grandmothers and my husband's aunts and grandmothers and mother, like everyone can sew something and make something. Like, so when I had 2 kids, like we all of a sudden got these quilts and Afghans and sort of all these like beautifully homemade things. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, of course, being so crazy, I'm like labeling everything like this is from your great grandma so-and-so and whatever. And then I was kind of depressed because I was like, I haven't made them anything. I don't know how to make anything. Like, I know how to sew a little bit, but I just haven't kept up with anything. So it was candidly like, I don't know. I feel like moms, we like do the stuff of like the memory making and all that and documenting. And I was like, I need a Christmas stocking for them. And I was like looking at buying one. And then I was like, or I could make one. And then I got down wormhole. Like this is just goes to show like how insane I am, is that I'm like, I've never needle pointed anything before. Nobody taught me how to do it. I just like looked at a YouTube video, ordered some stuff. I did a very ambitious pattern that, of course it's like a full stocking. And I was like, I'm just going to figure it out and do it. And so, I did. And the first one is coming hopefully in November. It's going to be finished. Like, the finishing is the backing. But I know nothing about it. And these like adorable women in, I would say St. Louis are like, you've never done a project before. They're like, why didn't you start with a tiny square? And I was like, oh, that's not me. Like, I'm going to go full bore. Like,
I did the same thing. So literally I walk into the store and Bree, you're going to laugh your ass off. Cause it was just an hour or two before the taping here. And
like, I need some.
Yeah. And I wasn't in a skeleton onesie when I was in the store. I walked into the store and I look at everyone. I'm like, hi, I need a Halloween themed needlepoint. And they started off with this little Dracula that was very small, mostly one color, right? Very easy. But I was like, no. I'm sort of artsy. Can I have something a little bit more ambitious? And they looked at me and they're like, have you done this before? And I'm like, no, there's no part of me that's ever done needlepoint before. And they just thought it was the funniest thing. And,
you're like, first of all, we don't see men in here very often. So.
Yeah, well, actually, so it turns out that there are quite a few men in the community that come out and that utilize their shop, and so
they invite you to like a stitch and bitch session.
Yeah, and and they're fantastic. They're like. There were a lot of people in the store, everything. So it was a great first experience. Again, I'm really glad that Bree said you were not doing any needlepoint on the show, because I probably couldn't get the thread through the needle to begin with.
You need a needle threader.
I did it myself, actually. And I did it in front of Libby, and Libby was like, that's impressive. And I'm like, thank you.
Like, I'm like so proud of you on a whole level.
Was this around the time, because you had already worked with Martha, right? Did you ever just go, oh, Martha, I YouTubed videos of you doing needlepoint, and therefore, like, that's how I learned.
Before I started, I had no time for anything. The wonderful thing about her company is that there was pretty much like the highest, I don't know, caliber of craft person like was on her staff. Like if you would like to understand pottery, like there was a potter. There was, a craft expert, a like sort of head of crafts. Like, I mean, it was just like a fascinating just amalgamation of the top creative talent that probably existed across the country under one roof. Like, I don't think that'll ever happen again, because it was so cool. I mean, these people were like experts on the most niche things, and like, it was just, I could have like hung out with any of them and just like watched them do their thing. Like, so it was more like they were the experts, and Martha, and they were the ones like sort of staying on top of, the trends and strategies on this stuff. But it was so cool to see them and like collaborate with each other. I think that was the best part of working at that company, was the amount of talent that was under one roof. That was like just like the most amount of like creative grouping I've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. So you're in college, you're a basketball player. So what the audience cannot see is that you're very tall.
A wingspan.
You are 6'2"?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Wow, that's pretty cool. So you had a really good advantage behind the bar and on the court.
Yes, everyone thought. So my sister, who started Fish on Lemonade, wait here, I have to show you because it's now melting.
Yes.
Wait, this is the.
Don't let it melt. You have to consume it.
I know. I'll just chug it later. This one's the pink flamingo. I get to say it, named it actually. And then these ones are the iced teas, but I love them. Behind the bar, people thought we were standing on something. They would always be like, is it higher back there? And we were like, no, we're just giants. It was helpful for obviously getting things on high shelves, which is what's behind Bree. Yeah. And then basketball, and my dad's 6'5". And so it was like, and I was probably 6 feet at, I think it was 5'11" at 11. I remember thinking I was cool. Like 11,
wow.
I just always played sports because I was athletic, and when you're that tall, when you're young, like candidly, all the coaches look at you and just start like, what can I mold you into? And being from Connecticut, like UConn's the force. And so my dad went to UConn, so it was like basketball. And I loved it, but I did field hockey, basketball, and track. And like, I don't know. I mean, I sort of had an identity crisis after college because everything was so sports focused that I was like, what do I do now?
So you had your roommate introduce you to a recruiter. Tell us more the story of how you got introduced into the world that you did.
New York is really good about bubbling up these like loose connections. And candidly, I think if you follow up with sort of half of them, it could always lead to something. Like the interesting thing about everyone coming to New York is that they're mostly like, they're seeking something, right? And so there's sort of clarity of that. But then I'd say there's just fascinating, like it's such a power center. So people are always like, if you're talking to someone and you make it up to the top, like I said, with the crafting and Martha Stewart, like you can be with like all the best crafters that exist. I had a roommate. I had 2 roommates. One was like a friend of a friend who was like, my friend's a headhunter and I was looking for a job. I was actually working at a restaurant in New York, like that was in our basement, which is like this incredible 5-star restaurant. I naively thought that I could just get a bartending job. And they were like, we are like a 20-year institution and Elvis is the bartender, not you. And I was like, okay.
Until Elvis has left the building.
The best part was one of those like incredible Italian restaurants. It's called Scalinatella. You go downstairs, it means staircase in Italian. And I didn't realize like all the celebrities would go there for dinner all the time. And so like it would be John Bon Jovi, like Beyonce and Jay-Z, Howard Stern. Like, I mean, it was just like a revolving door of celebs, like on like a Monday or Tuesday. But anyway, that was like what I was spending my days doing while I was looking for a job. And yeah, she introduced me to a headhunter, who just meeted like 3 other headhunters. And then this wonderful guy, I gotta give him a shout out, Jonathan Hova, like changed my life. And he was like, you would be perfect for Martha. And I was like, who's Martha? And he was like, Martha Stewart, like, and he obviously was tight with HR. It got me an interview and I don't know how old I was, like 24 or something, 23. And yeah, they hired me like that afternoon, and I was a temp. Like I was just supposed to be a band-aid until like they found someone with actual experience on being an executive assistant or chief of staff, because I was a baby and had been in New York for like a month.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know what anything was either.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she liked me, and so she kept me on. And then it was like 3 years. So
But
They
what
still have temps? I'm just curious because I used to know so many people that got their permanent jobs by being just a really good temp.
yeah. I mean, sometimes they're just like, are you breathing? Could we bring
Yeah.
you in?
They don't call them temps anymore, right? Like
No
I think
idea.
that's not entitled enough. You have to be like an unpaid intern nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Right.
like you can't be a temp.
That's
I don't
the
think anyone's a
deal.
temp. I don't know.
Yeah, but this was a temp agency.
Yeah.
And it was very much like, hey, just temp. And like the goal from the guy who ran HR, I can't remember his name, he was so sweet. He was like a soccer dad. And he was like, just see if you can like land with a job within the company, like maybe something will open up on like, a junior position in like editorial or something. And I was like, sounds good. Like,
What was Manhattan for you like? Like you moved there, you're poor, you're fresh off the college, you're working at a restaurant. Like it's not Sex in the City, right?
Oh no. I also remember this was good advice from my mom. She's like, you need a job while you're looking for a job. And this was like back when you would actually like circle the newspaper ads and like, and so I used to just like walk. And so she's like, but you need a job where like you can walk to, because you don't want to spend money like commuting and all the rest of it. And I was like, okay. And so like literally just walked down the 6th floor, walk up and like just restaurant. I was like, you hiring? They were like, we could be. And so then I used to sit at the bar during the afternoon when the staff was eating, and just like literally circle jobs in the paper of, what might I submit my, blind resume to a blind email, and no one would ever respond to me. And then take reservations in a fake Italian accent so that, like whoever was calling.
Can you give us a fake Italian accent right now? Just give us your
what would I say? It'd be like, buongiorno, scalinatella, like, or something ridiculous like that.
I love it.
You sound like Lady Gaga on House of Gucci.
Like it's terrible. Yeah. But like, I just remember like people, it was so funny. It was such a cool job. Yeah. And then I took, and then I wanted a free gym membership. So I went down to Equinox and signed up to like take cards, like scan your card. Yeah. And then got a free gym membership that way. So I got my dinners paid for and my gym paid for, which was my goal.
Okay. But you go from doing these jobs to then landing a 3-year position as Martha's chief of staff assistant for 3 years in very like, this is right out of jail, Martha, right? This is out of jail on a mission, Martha. Like she's reinventing. I don't know if she had to reinvent herself so much as she just got The Apprentice going. She wrote a book.
There was a lot.
What was the most, and then you were sort of head of special projects. So first of all, what the fuck was that like? Right? I guess is the question.
It was awesome. Are you kidding? She's probably one of the most intelligent people that exists on the planet. And it was so fun. Like I can see the fear. Like I can see why people are sort of afraid because of the intensity. It's really what it is. And she's very inquisitive. And so that can come across as frankly bitchy, like of just like, oh my gosh. But candidly, like if it was a guy, like you would just be like, he's a genius. But she's a genius. She's so smart. She's so high functioning. Like, the whole time, like every day of the week, every hour she's awake. I don't know who has a busier brain. Like, I haven't come across them. Ken's equally genius in a different way, but he like appreciates his downtime. And I think that helps his creativity. So there's just like it was a very different environment, but being so young and learning from her, I also had a pretty good sense of humor about the whole thing too, which like made it really fun. And I definitely went in thinking I was going to get fired every day. So I might as well just like do the job, like I wasn't there to make friends or, make her like me or anything like that. And I definitely wasn't there to be afraid of her. So it was really fun once I think she realized that like I was there to do the work, and she was like, okay, like I have someone who's going to execute at the level that I was looking for. So I just kind of treated it like that. But she's incredibly creative. Like, I mean, it was so freaking funny. Like the amount of stuff that would get emailed to her that people would be like, I have an opportunity for you, or like whatever, or just the insanity that is a large corporation, which most of them are disorganized. Like this one was no exception. Like I just found it to be like a hilarious, because I was so young. I was like, I mean, it was sort of me always going in my head, like, can't believe this is the thing that I'm working on right now, but this is the thing that matters. Like,
what were some of the project, like the craziest projects you worked on?
So basically she's like the chief innovator, right, of the company and the corporation. And so many of the ideas came from her. And then it actually was like really interesting precursor to startup operations, because if like the board was the venture capital firm they were funding, like I basically had to create something and like build an MVP in order to then have it go present to the board for basically corporate funding. And she was the one who was like, go do this. Like, we're going to go work on this, and there was sort of and it was actually amazing because I had a lot of freedom within the company because like I only reported to Martha. Like, so like no one else could really be like, yeah, we're not working on that. It was like, if this is what Martha wants, is what Martha wants. One of the most
rapid prototyping?
Not really, because she was pretty focused on like we did, I don't know if I have it here. We did this book called The Entertaining Book, which is the sequel to the book that got her famous. And this was sort of like a magnum opus for her. She wanted, I think the company had been around for like 20 years or something at that point. And she really wanted to go back and sort of recreate it with like a modern lens. But it was a coffee table book, but it had recipes, and it was just like big, dramatic, like it's like this big. And so I worked on that like the whole time that I was there, like as a side project. And like the corporation was always like, yeah, we're not like taking this on. And then eventually like it got published. I think one of the saddest days for me was like, because I was the only person on the project, when like finally the corporation was like, okay, we'll do it. And it was a huge hit, but like I had to like bring like dozens of binders of years of like information and files like into the company. And I was like, here you go. Cause like it was like at her barn for a while because like there was no space. And this was just like pictures and photographs and events, like, I mean, for years. So like she had a similar long-term appetite and approach. So it wasn't rapid prototyping, but it might be like rapid following up with certain projects that were in like different forms of the company. But one of the fun photo shoots we did was a collaboration with Wired magazine. Scott Dadich was the editor at the time. And it was a whole interview on her, and like the photo shoot was supposed to be a little wonky. So I had to get a cake made like in the shape of a Nintendo Wii, because that was like the latest technology at the time. And then like we had this like big giant robot topiary. And so I had to source everything. And then also, and like, I also had to convince Martha to do the photo shoot, like, but we had to do it in our studios because I was like, that's the only way she'll do it. She can like walk down the hall. And so like Scott was awesome. And he was like, thank you so much for like basically making his cover story work. And it was like a 5-page spread or something, but like all the stuff sort of from his initial email with the chief creative director to like getting it tied up and her approving the pictures was like also like a huge thing. It took months to, I don't know, get that across the table, because that was like a random one-off that was more like her brand versus like a corporation's line of business. But yeah.
That sounds very Devil Wears Prada.
That movie came out the year I took the job, and do you know how many people gave me like copies of the DVD? And they were like, yeah.
I know there's so many movies that come to mind when I think of like the era that you worked in Manhattan. It's a very iconic era. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I do remember one of the first tests she gave me. It was her driver's birthday, like the first week I was working, and she was like, it's Rock's birthday. Like, I need to get him a present, which meant I needed to get him a present. And so I have him like take me down to Bergdorf's, like, you know, like I don't have a company credit card, at least my credit card, you know, I'm like, what am I gonna like, but I basically have to like get him something. The challenge was like, I had to get him something that he would like, that wasn't sort of like random.
Yeah.
Also that felt like it was from her and had like her taste level. And I don't know her, you know, like, I mean, it's a week. And so like, I remember getting out of the car and I was like, what's your favorite color, Rock? And she was like, black, like, you know, and so like, I run in there and I'm like, this could be too expensive because like, I'm sure this is something I'm expensing, you know, and I don't need the expense department like on my ass, like whatever. So like run around. I also have like 15 minutes, you know, like to do this because we're supposed to be picking her up at like whatever, the studios. And so I remember like I got an Hermes tie because I saw Kevin Sharkey, who's her right hand, like he just had a like display of Hermes boxes like in his office. And I was like, okay, well, she must like it if he likes it. So like, that's okay. Cause everything he touches like turns into gold. So I got him like a black on black Hermes tie for like $100, which felt like it wasn't too ostentatious. And then like, of course it was like this funny, it felt like a movie. Like I remember opening, like I saw her at the office like 20 minutes later and she's like, what'd you get? You know, like opening up the box. And I was like, here you go. And she was like, you're very good.
Yes.
Can you do a Martha Stewart impersonation?
I can't, but I used to be able to sign her signature pretty well.
Okay. That's amazing.
For the book signing stuff, not anything else. Just
yeah.
Hi, I'm Martha Stewart.
Hi.
That's all I got. Hi.
One of the things that you mentioned just now, which kind of I want to pull out because Bree, by the way, who does a massive amount of research before every single episode,
you know, like so much
she mentioned this. Well, you mentioned it, and then you just kind of doubled up on it, and so I want to talk about something that I think all the founders and venture capitalists could really benefit from hearing, which is about being tenacious with follow-up.
Yeah.
And I know you've mentioned it before, but I'd love for you to just kind of expound on that just for a few minutes.
And let me add to that. You talked about being a powerhouse networker earlier as well. So like, I would love for you to like expand on what it means to be, you know, like a powerhouse networker, as well as, you know, the tenacious follow-up and kind of some of the tactics you use.
I would say Jessica, my partner, is totally the powerhouse networker. Like she can run circles around me. Women in VC is a prime example. Like she had the intelligence to be like, she recognized that women were sort of being hired at venture firms as the only, and then took that gap and brought them together in a community, knowing that they were looking for community because they weren't getting it from their jobs. Brought them together and like knows everyone, like talks to everyone. Like this woman has endless energy and is like on Slack all the time. And so I feel like now there's this generation of women VCs that know her by name. If they've probably corresponded with her because she onboards everybody, but it's just like, that to me is like an incredible networking capability. And it's all in her head, even though it's a giant database of like who does what and who invests in what. So I think there's like a level of ambition and curiosity around mapping networks that Jessica certainly has. I'm interested in it too, but I think she thinks about it more in a data-driven way. I think on the follow-up thing, I remember my first like follow-up lesson was at Martha when I was like, again, in my early 20s. And I remember she like, you know, called me and was like doing this like very quick list of like all the open items that were clearly in her head. And she was like, what about this? What about this? And I was like, oh yeah, I sent him a note, like haven't heard back. And she's like, follow up. And I was like, oh, I gotcha. Like, because like it wasn't, and it had been 24 hours. It's not like it had been 2 weeks. Like, but the point is that I hadn't closed the loop fast enough. And so there's obviously a sense of what do you let burn? What do you target? But it was just like a very good lesson very quickly of like, I gotcha. There's things you need to stay up on. I think also especially with the way that we Zoom now, everyone's like, yeah, it'd be great to hear about that, or it'd be great to do whatever. And so you're like, yeah, I'll let you know when I have an interesting opportunity for you. But like, where does that go outside of your brain? You know, like we only pretty much remember who we met or what we said. Candidly, it's like a 24-hour sponge that then just gets like rinsed out the next day. So you have to have a bit of a system to capture that, and then have it, like, humans are wonderful at remembering, we're terrible at recalling. And so what is your system to be able to recall at the point of next contact? And that's the stuff that I think really deepens relationships, or people are like, oh my gosh, like you remembered my kid's name, or you remembered that I was working on this thing. So I take a lot of notes. Jessica takes a lot of notes. I mean, this is the art of listening, right? Like, what do people say, and what do they care about, and when do they light up in a conversation? Because those are the things that I think you can build, especially like if you're not seeing people in person, like a virtual relationship around. But yeah, I mean, the art of the follow-up is something we could I would love to take a masterclass in it. But I do think it's the secret to unlocking a lot of opportunity if you're like hoping to be like crafting the right place, right time. You know,
I do feel like you're way too humble and you could be teaching the masterclass in it. But that's for another discussion. I mean, part of that is you don't really shy away from any interaction whatsoever. And I remember the conversation really about you getting on the show was, we were on a Zoom call. Like, I don't know how many GPs were on the call with Cool Water, and
it was like 45.
Yeah, there were a lot. And you know, what's up to Winner and Angelina and the rest of the team if you're listening. But we were on a call, and I literally just like texted you. I was like, or Zoom messaged you, hey, do you want to be on Drinks with the VC? And you're like, what is it? And I'm like, we drink and tell your story. And you're like, yes, sounds fun. And that was it. But like, honestly, you were also really busy, really engaged in this conversation. And here I was like, just totally like
slide chatting me.
Yeah, like sliding into your Zoom messages and going, hey, come on the show. And I don't know. I feel like you could teach the masterclass, but you don't shy away from interactions. And I think that's part of the reason why you give yourself so many at-bats at being successful, that these good things happen to you, that the timing and being in the right place at the right time happens to you. Two of them that we haven't talked about yet are your meet cute with the two most important people in your life. So Jessica, and with your husband. So I think Bree and I are very interested in understanding, like, how did that come about? How did those two relationships come about?
Yeah, these are those things of, again, like the world's funny. But okay, so Jessica, I met after I had left Lerer Hippeau. And that was, when was that? March 2014, I started with Galvanized Ventures. So I was still in New York. And Jessica had just joined her corporate CVC. And so she, being like the other end of the story and her networking, immediately like jumps into networking and starts like figuring out who works in venture capital in New York, because she was new to VC, but she wasn't new to marketing. And so this was sort of like a new role. So I give her a ton of credit, because I feel like I was sort of like, sure. And she was the one actively like making it happen more so. But it was interesting because I kind of like got out of the office for the first time. Like at Lerer, we had these fun offices, and candidly, like everyone sort of showed up there. So I didn't really have to go to a ton of networking stuff, because our firm had sort of jumped the shark, like, or whatever that phrase is, where people started showing up. And so I felt like my network existed sort of on the back of Ken and Ben's, and they were always first point of contact, because they're Ken and Ben, like, you know, like, why would you not? And then all of a sudden I got out and I was like, oh, I have to like, go meet people. But this wonderful guy, Ryan Bloomer, who runs K50. Now I was in San Francisco. We're like sitting on a couch in Galvanize. Like, I'm in New York. I think he was in Chicago or somewhere else, or maybe he was, but I don't think he was in San Francisco being in San Francisco either. And so we were just talking about, in Canada, it was that uninteresting where he's like, I know one other woman in venture capital in New York, like you should meet her. And I was like, cool. And like art of follow-up, like he actually followed up and was like, remember that woman I told you I wanted you to meet? Like, here's Jessica. And so we had drinks, or maybe it was lunch, I can't remember, but it was like tea or something. And we immediately hit it off. We were like chatting over email, like immediately hit it off. And then like the whole first meeting was about how do you manage your personal stock portfolio? And like, I was like, and she had like a spreadsheet because she was like analyzing like all the robo advisors at that point. And I was like, oh yeah, I just invested in a robo advisor. And like, so like, I was like going through like the data, you know, and we were like, oh, and then we realized like our both CPAs. And so then we were both like talking about all that random stuff, but basically, and then we like floated in between, I think, I don't know, she was getting married or something. And like, it was just like a whole personal work conversation. And then again, art of follow-up, she was like, well, what are you working on? She was doing only B2B SaaS and I was a journalist. And so then she like follows up with like, let's grab time like once a month, you know, and just like chat and swap deals. And I was like, great. Like, and then we basically did that for like the rest of our lives. Until like once a month turned into like all the time. And then we started sort of going thesis shopping. So shout out to Ryan Bloomer for
Ryan.
Wife.
Absolutely.
Basically. And then meet cute with the hubs. Yeah. New York dating is hard. So I'll underscore that.
You do look like a model though. So that's helpful.
Thank you very much. And
the problem is all models live in New York.
Exactly.
That's the problem. You look like a model. However, you were the capital of models. So that was not something that made you stand out.
Yes, no, definitely not. And people don't really want to like date in New York. Like they don't want to be like, in a relationship. I remember being in a cab with my good friend Julian. This is like years later when we were going to like, of course, like a fashion show thing that he had tickets to. And I was like, oh, cool. And I was mentioning that like my best friend who didn't live in New York, like got engaged, but I didn't say that. I said, oh, my friend just got engaged. And without even like looking up from his iPhone, he's like, well, he must not live in New York because no one gets engaged in New York. And I was like, that is accurate.
That is accurate.
I was like, man. So I joined Galvanized Ventures. I met my now husband the first day, which is like,
wow.
Yeah, but we didn't date immediately. It took a long time.
Wait, both your meet cutes were from Galvanized.
We're at Galvanized.
Basically. So like the word is
galvanizing.
Galvanizing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was one of those interesting opportunities where like I remember being really nervous about like taking the leap and joining a new fund and building it again from scratch. Like that was the thing where I was like, I knew I could do it, but you know, there's like all these, like, who am I going to meet? What am I like, what if I, you know, are my partners not getting along? Like, what's the, you know, there was just this like big open-ended strategy. And then we were the country and candidly, like I didn't have a deep network across like, you know, multiple markets. Like, so there was just this like unknown, like, am I going to be any good at this? And then also like I was running into the same circles in New York, both socially and work-wise. And so part of me taking this was I had a thesis around market development. I was like, if New York came to mind this quickly, like I do think Boulder, Seattle, Los Angeles, and Austin like have a presence. And so I was attracted to the Galvanized model because it looked like BetaWorks on steroids, like across the country. And we built Lerer Hippeau out of BetaWorks. So that I felt like gave me a wider network. And selfishly in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe I'll meet someone. Like, I hope he doesn't listen to this and then he's going to feel like you're.
I hope he does listen to this.
Me too. I'm going to send it to him.
Yeah, we should. Absolutely.
Sweet. I like the in-house skeptic that is my husband. It keeps me honest.
But you were dating for 6 months.
We were dating for 6 months before we got married, but it took a year for us to like go on a good date. Let's say that.
Wow.
I remember day one and I'm sitting there at my desk and I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? Like, I just joined this like new company and like, I just like the nerves kicked in for like the responsibility and we still had to close the fund and like, you know, all that stuff. And meanwhile, like look up from the desk And there's this like handsome guy on his cell phone, just like circling the desk, like making eye contact. And I was like, oh, he's handsome. I was like, what am I thinking? Like, I'm supposed to be working. Like, this is like day one. It's a cuter story too there was a girl that worked at the company, I should say a woman, Brady, hi Brady Campbell. And she told me later that Nicholas, my husband, like, he's a very action oriented person. He immediately day one, like went up to her and like, while she was like in the copy room, he's like, who's the tall blonde? And she's like, she lives in New York. She's running the fund. I think she's dating someone, like, don't even think about it. Or I think she has a New York boyfriend is like how she phrased it.
Oh, wow.
He goes, this is her recounting this. And he goes, she's the Denver boyfriend. And then, like, walked out. And then immediately, like, right after that was like, he handed me a business card and was like, hi, I'm Nicholas. Like, no, you know, and I was like, okay. But I'm sure he would tell it a different way, but that's how I remember it.
But he was good on the follow-up.
Very good on the follow-up.
Okay.
This is the point. He's good on the follow-up.
He's good on the follow-up.
Yeah, but I would say that it's really funny. Like, I think he and I are both a product of marrying our parents. That's one of those things where sometimes that you recognize that behavior and you're like, oh, this is familiar. He's a fascinating combination of my parents. And my name is Catherine. His mother's name is Catherine, and she was also a bartender. And so he's like, sometimes you're just a very ditzy bartender. And I was like, that's fair. Which I love you, Kathy, my mother-in-law, but she's the best. And so we marry our parents, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's far from the truth. I think there are certainly times, good and bad, where Laura resembles my mom, which I'm sorry, Laura, I said that out loud, and I know she'll
like, I don't listen to your podcast either.
Yeah, exactly. I try and shield her from that. Well, look, we've acknowledged that you dive into your passions and you face them and you really immerse yourself into them. We uncovered in our questionnaire to you another one of your passions, and so open up the other part of that box.
Oh my God,
the Amazon box.
Okay.
It's a dive book. It's a coffee table book
it's a
for
coffee
diving.
Table book
Oh my gosh. Oh my.
She's like, oh my God.
So while you're opening this box, I have to tell you that you and I were in the same place at the same time, like two ships in the night here. We were in Lake Como in May. I
was in July though.
Oh, July. Okay.
August.
Yeah. I had not been on a vacation in like 4 years. And that coincidentally 4 years ago was when we went to Fiji on our honeymoon. So like it was a very long time. We went to Lake Como amongst other places in Italy and had a beautiful time.
Love it.
What is next on your bucket list? And I'm hoping that it's something that involves free diving.
I would freaking love that. Unfortunately, it's hard to get time to do free diving with Tulip. But and my husband and I keep joking because my brother-in-law is practically a professional free diver, if not one. So I hope they have kids and then he can feel the pain. Not being able to do all the fun things you want to do.
Maybe you guys can go on couples trips together.
Yes, yeah.
Driving together.
Yeah, I know. It's like also hilarious story on like how my brother-in-law came into our family. But yeah, the freediving started because one of our friends is like one of the best freedivers in the country, and he did a course for us in Florida a couple years ago, and my oldest baby was little, and so much that, like, I mean, I love them so much. Hi, John, and Bree, not you, Bree, his wife. And she babysat G, Gunnison, my oldest, while we like just basically spent 2 full days like doing the pool work, the course work, and like the breath holding lessons, and then going out and doing it, for a couple hours, really. Like, it was so cool. And yeah, I wish I had figured it out younger because I probably would have spent a lot more time doing it. But I I just remember like John took these cool pictures and then, but it just was like a sense of clarity when I was doing it, you know, like once I figured out how to like clear my ears and just keep going down, I was like, oh, that's it. Like, you know, obviously there's a whole bunch of regulation stuff you have to pay attention to, but it's fascinating. Like anyone can hold their breath for like 2 minutes.
Wait, hold on.
You totally can't. You just have to like,
I have asthma.
Breathe up and do it. And like, it's all focus.
It's
like,
all focus.
Everything focus. Everything boils down to follow focus. If those are the 2 things we can take away from today.
That's fantastic. I mean, do you think, so here's the question. Do you meditate?
No, I need to like learn how to do that. But that would be nice. Like, I think it's probably, I actually think the needlepoint is like a sort of a form of meditation.
Why not? I mean, meditation takes different forms. So I don't, like if you're free diving and you are choosing to take that moment to like really get into a meditative state to get to where you are, right? That seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So by the way, if we're talking about episodes and impactful episodes over the last 4 seasons, if like the answers are follow up and focus, that's pretty good, Kate.
I mean, I guess that's the point, right? You got to distill it down into some sort of takeaway.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's like the thing I spend a ton of time trying to achieve every day is like, how can I be more focused in the things that matter? So that I feel like I don't know, feel good at the end of the day, help the people I wanted to help. Like, I don't know, there's so much stuff we can all spend our time on, but I don't know, and learn something new, right?
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't probably go unnoticed by you. You're very empathetic. That, you know, you look up to Martha Stewart, Ariana Huffington, you know, you've had that opportunity. And I think there are a new crop of emerging female managers in particular that look up to you as sort of like epitomizing what it means to be sort of the modern, you know, working woman.
Yeah.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is for you to do well, not only in this job, but also in kind of helping kind of this generation of female investors? I know that's a lot, but
I think thank you. That's incredibly kind to say. And I don't feel that I don't know.
Yeah, you do.
No, but it's weird. Like, it's weird to think, but I do feel a deep empathy for knowing what it's like to feel like I said, with the galvanized thing, and even at Lerer Hippeau too, I was like, what the hell am I going to do to make a difference? You know, like, how am I going to matter or contribute? And I didn't really have any sort of female to look up to in the venture world to say, like, I want to emulate my lifestyle like that. Mm-hmm. I actually took a lot from Kenny. Like, he was wonderfully intentional in everything he did. Like, his family was center of his universe, which no offense, Martha, that really wasn't her experience, you know, like, and everyone has a different experience, but like, it was really interesting to see someone like Kenny who had an incredible filter. Like he said no to so much stuff, which meant that he obviously made space for the stuff that mattered. So if ever anyone from his family, including like cousins, called, that was the priority. Like, he stepped out of the meeting to take the call. It was never like, I'll call you back after I'm in this board meeting. Like, and that sort of reprioritization was so inspirational to me, because I had my immediate family, but I wasn't married with kids yet. And so it was really nice to see someone very powerful and a male figure in that, prioritizing his wife, his kids, his nieces and nephews, and their friends, frankly. Like, it was pretty much like those were the most important people, and the people around him in the business sense also knew it too. Like, there wasn't this, like, I don't know. So that just sort of reframing was just so inspirational. I think this is something that Jess and I talk about a lot, and candidly, in some ways, like, I'm grateful that COVID put family first in a lot of experiences, because I think we were talking about this before, if you were trying to figure out how you could live your ideal life, like whatever that means to you want to be closer to whatever activity you like doing or the people you love, but New York and San Francisco and Boston have historically been the power centers for our business. Does that mean that needs to be where you need to be in order to make a difference in your business, but also like when you're not working, feel good about your life? And that was the choice I was making when I picked working for the galvanized firm, is I kind of knew I sort of intentionally picked it so that I could get to Colorado. It's where my best friend lived. And I really liked the lifestyle more so than I liked the New York lifestyle for my long-term life. And with the caveat of like, how do I get back to the East Coast, like for like 2 months every year, and go hang out on Fisher's Island. I was pretty methodical in planning that. So I think those were my North Stars. And then I framed everything else around it. But for younger women coming up in the business, like, you just have to surround yourself with people you like working with. I've always been able to I've been really lucky. Like, I loved working with Martha. I loved working with Ken, Ben, Eric, like Jordan. It was the most fun. The galvanized team was super inspirational. Like, loved those guys. I still am actually working with them on that fund, even though it's in harvest mode. And so I'm psyched when I get emails from them, like that should be the feeling. And then Jessica, like I said, she's my second, we're like the same brain, and I like love her dearly. And so like, that should be how work should be, And I think we probably prioritize the wrong things sometimes in working relationships, and we focus on the ambition and the advancement. But I think if you're making good choices on the values that mean what they mean to you, like the good stuff will come. It just might take longer. But then you don't have to sacrifice things and feel icky, like, doing those choices. So I don't know. But keep at it. I mean, venture's the long game, right?
Exactly. Well, you've said that your superpower is resourcefulness, which I think we saw a really good example of that when you were talking about putting together some of Martha's special projects.
Yeah.
How do you use that superpower in venture?
God, every day. I have this weird skill set where I've built 3 funds from the ground up, which is something that like, I hope I never have to do it again. Like the last one, but there's a resourcefulness that's utilized in framing the business that we're building for Hannah Gray. But then I think of portfolio support as basically just that, I feel like Matt McCall said this best, and he was on last season, and he said something about you need to offer up the one phone call that solves the problem, right? And it was the same thing working with Martha, and it's the same with bartending, actually, if I'm going to rope it all. Is how few steps can you take to get the thing, solve the problem, pour the drink? You can't spend all day pontificating on whatever it is. So you have to run the series through your mind. My sister and I have this funny slogan, and she'll actually listen to this podcast, where whenever we felt like we were met with a challenge when we were in our late teens, early 20s, we were like, how do we be like James Bond and just get out of it? There's always a window. If the door's closed, where's the window? What are the other things? And that's the feeling I have all the time in venture is there's probably a solve for this. You just have to think creatively and think through options A through F of what the scenarios are. And that's the thing too, is no company is built the same. No company exits the same. The tax treatment could be different. The cap table looks different. The circumstances are all different. So each one's a different pattern. There's really no pattern matching in that. But candidly, it's we all have this information. How do you recall it very quickly? How do you execute on it really quickly? So, I don't know, fundraising's like that too. I mean, from our standpoint of our own fundraising, how are you going to unlock another new pipeline of people to talk to and close them in the limited time that it takes to build that relationship? So I don't know.
You have said that you're professed blended for punishment and you dive into a company's taxes, audit situation, cap table, whatever it is, you love it. We're very appreciative that you've been a glutton for punishment and joined us on this podcast. Before you leave, it would be nothing without asking you 5 questions, burning questions that Bree and I have. We switch them up every season. The season's no different. Are you game to play 5 burning questions with us?
Totally.
All right. Bree, do you want to start it off?
All right, let me pull up. Okay, if you could do it all over again, would you rather be an investor or a builder?
Investor.
Okay. All right.
I always say this. I founder envy all the time, but there isn't an idea that I've come across that I love so much that I would rather do that than investing. And I always think of it as like, I just really like building venture capital firms and like understanding the nuances of that. So that's the stuff that makes my brain tick.
Love it. All right. What movie best fits the future of the human race? Is it WALL-E, Avatar, or The Matrix? And I can, if you don't remember WALL-E, we can.
No.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna say like Charlton Heston with what was the movie, Planet of the Apes?
Oh yeah. Well,
it's funny because Skyline was a portfolio company of ours, and like once I remember explaining that name to like people on our team, they were like, "What?" And I was like,
yeah.
so messed up. I don't know, The Matrix. I feel like that's just gonna be this world of like what's real, what's not. Although it would be, it's cuter, sort of, but also good. I don't know.
Well, but then if it's WALL-E, we've all degenerated into like in a beast state due to anti-gravity living and metaverse. So
all of it sounds terrible.
Yeah. All right, Bree, you're up.
Would you rather spend $1 million on a trip to the Earth's outer orbit or $1 million traveling anywhere to place on planet Earth?
Anywhere to place on planet Earth, for sure.
What would that place be? Do you have a short list?
I would let my husband pick.
Okay.
He has a long list of bucket list items that he feels very deeply passionate about. Right now, it's Bolivian salt flats, Africa. I mean, the list goes on. This is what we do. And usually I say we can't go until our kids are older, and then he gets irritated. So there's that.
Real quickly, does he pick the vacation location and you plan the whole thing, or is he also doing the logistics?
He does all of it. He would prefer it that way.
Right.
Even though I like to think I'm pretty good at logistics. Haven't been like working for Martha Stewart, but I'm married to a control freak. So what does that say about me?
Nicholas Beardsley, when you listen to this, I really want you to get my email address, follow up with me, and connect with me. I feel like you're a person I would get along very well with. All right. Okay. Very controversial 4th question. Would you invest in Adam Newman's Flow?
No. Sorry.
Do you care to elaborate?
I just not my jam for the level of, I think, where he's going to be entrepreneurially in a value set state I don't want to live with in my portfolio. I'm sure it'll be an interesting ride for Andreessen, but no thanks.
That is very well put. Okay, here we go.
All right,
Bree, you ready?
One deal that you passed on that you wish you hadn't.
Allbirds. That one makes me bummed out. My old fund Lerer was doing it. I got to see it around the same time. I remember talking to Ben and he was like, you should come in. And I just don't think I did a good job selling it to my partners at Galvanize, which also speaks to the job of selling it to your partners. We were just stretched. And I remember like everything in my gut was firing and I was like, this is going to be an interesting one. So it's fun to see on everyone's feet now, but I'm like, oh God, it would have been so nice. Yeah.
Do you ever go back to Fisher Island and you're at the bar and everyone's wearing Allbirds and they're looking at you and they're like, That Kate, she
No
fucked
one knows
up.
what I do on Fisher's Island, which is sort of great. So
Yeah.
I get to kind of be a little anonymous in that.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, Bree, I don't know. I'm always astounded at the level of transparency that our guests afford us, and Kate was no different.
Thank you to
on that side.
alcohol.
Yeah, thank you, alcohol.
One tool in our tool bag.
Yeah, again, Fisher's Island lemonade, but they also have popsicles. They have multiple different types of fantastic alcohol laden drinks, 7% by volume. 9%, so
9% is
9%.
Yeah, so think of it as like it's economical too. It's basically 2 drinks in one.
Yeah.
But yeah, all lemonade based and available in 14 states. So.
Except for Missouri. and I don't know about where California is on this list, but we got to get it there. But anyway, we're just very thankful that you chose to spend a few hours of your day with us. We know that you've got the kids running around going crazy. You've got the kids of the, all the portfolio companies and the founders running around going crazy. And so we very much appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. With that, we'd love to gift you the final VC unboxing, which feel free to pull that out at this point.
Okay.
And here we go.
Patagonia, every VC's jam.
Every VC's jam.
Except now they don't let you embroider.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless.
See, I really need to know how you did this because they just went back on their publicity, but Fisher's Island lemonade logo, Branya, I got my own.
Yeah, there you go, Branya.
This is awesome, you guys. Thank you.
And
it's large, I'm a giant. So
you're so welcome, and we hope that you wear it with with a little bit of confidence and happiness, and that you think of us fondly when you do.
Oh my God, I totally will. All my little walks to school with the kids, I'll sport the Lerer brand.
Love it. Well, listen, as we always do, we'd love for you to take us out with a final toast. It is your time to bring up anything you'd like. Again, Bree and I just can't thank you enough for being on, and we're so excited for what's to come for Hannah Gray.
Thank you guys. This was so fun.
All of our best. Yeah.
Okay. A final toast to our portfolio and hope that it does amazingly well, but toast to Jessica, my other half, but toast to the ladies who are working in venture because it's freaking hard. And yeah, call us up anytime if you need a drink and talk about it.
Cheers to that. Thank you.
Cheers.
Catch full episodes of Drinks with a VC on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, and on YouTube for video. Be sure to subscribe for the latest episode drops.